These shots were not. Throws to the grass. I hit a shot on like approach shot on like 10, not on counter. Just let it take that one pop and roll up. Yeah, just embedded it. Just disappeared in the ground. Yeah. Okay. All set, Jess?
And
Okay, good evening, everybody. I will call to order this second monthly meeting of the Village of Trumansburg Board of Trustees. Do any board members have any changes to the agenda? Nope.
no. She went to make more copies of the agenda.
I do want to add a short-ish public comment period at the beginning of the meeting prior to the public hearings. I'll also make a note that item number 3 should have said public hearing because that's how it was noticed. Public hearing for the purpose of public comment on the secret review. And I don't have any other additions to the agenda. So item 2A, the addition will be a first privilege of the floor public comment period for anyone here who has any public comment on anything not to do with zoning. I know there's at least one person.
Good evening, everyone. I don't know, you probably heard enough of this, but I wanted to address the issue of the library funding. And maybe to give you some more insights on that for your future deliberations. Just so you know, I was the attorney for the library board when they purchased the property there. Yao Chevrolet, you may remember that particular business which went under and had some environmental problems. The SBA ended up taking it over, and the library people wanted to have a new location for the library, which had originally been in the Masonic building and a few hours a week. And so the problem was, because of the Yao Chevrolet facility, there were environmental problems. The SBA, which was the holder of the title at that time, couldn't really clean up the mess. So we, as the attorney for the library, we came up with an idea which actually kept the deal afloat. Otherwise, it would have failed. Of having the SBA retain the part of the property which was environmentally compromised. So as it stands now, the SBA has, well, from 2000, has a 99-year lease on part of the library's property so that the library didn't have to bear the liability of the environmental issues. So after that, Jim Mason, who was then the chair of the county board of representatives, county legislature, was the chair of the board of the library, and that's how I got into it. Later on, I became a member of the board after the successful completion of the purchase and construction of the building, and I was on the board for 6 years, 2 of which I was president. So I'm familiar with the workings of the organization, and frankly, I was disappointed to read the opinions were expressed by people on this board, including don't blame me, it's my opinion. Well, your board members are entitled or are entitled to your opinions, but they have to be informed. And from what I gathered from the reading of in the paper, opinions and so forth, you were ill-informed. So I just wanted to make you sure that you understood that the library is a heart of our community, is a beacon of our democracy. And frankly, as you're well aware, libraries have been the whipping boy of populists across the country. So I was disappointed to see that this enlightened communities and your board was sort of me tooing that attitude. So I'm hoping that you will reconsider your decision on the board. You know, don't make them come to sing for their supper. That's insulting. The library is there. Expense of all not-for-profits is their staff, and they have to pay their staff sufficiently to attract people to take the job. So anyway, so I just wanted, I'm hoping that you have some discretionary in your ear so that this matter can be rectified and you won't have egg on your face as I think you have now in the community. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Anyone online with public comment not related to zoning? Okay, hearing none, then we'll move on to item number 3 on the published agenda, which is a public hearing to take public comment on the seeker portion of the draft zoning law, the seeker review for the draft zoning. I will ask that anyone who has comments on seeker specifically, anyone who has comments on the non-seeker portion of the zoning, wait until the next portion of the public hearing. So with that, I would entertain a motion from the board to open the public hearing to take public comment on the seeker review for the draft zoning law of 2023. So,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
So we are in our public hearing to take public comment on the seeker portion of the draft zoning law.
So exciting. I'd mentioned to some people, I used to be on a planning board, but it's been a long time. So I tried to brush up on my seeker review. I was going through part 2 of the environmental assessment form, and I found some information that I thought was a little off. And it's in really tiny letters, so I'll have to go like this. It says future development may occur in respect of proposed changes to the zoning ordinance. However, for purposes of this EAF review, it is too speculative to consider potential individually or cumulatively. Furthermore, each such matter would be subject to seeker review at the time of project implementation. Well, a lot of the development that could be coming about is the change allowing accessory dwelling unit, and this is a significant. Some of these can be as large as 15
say we should keep it broken.
Okay, quick, before we get disconnected.
As I was saying, um, future development may occur in respect of proposed changes to the zoning ordinance. However, for purposes of this EAF review, it is too speculative to consider potential
Yes. They're excited for
Okay, Erica, can you hear us?
Yes, now I can.
All right, folks, we're back. Apologize for the technical difficulties and interruption. We are in the public hearing and take public comment on the secret portion only.
I just have one
Yes.
comment. On the brief description of the proposal, it says updated zoning ordinance will include revisions to re-legalize existing housing parts in the village that are currently illegal due to setback, lot size, and lot width regulation. So that's not really a correct statement. So they're non-conforming lots. And they're not illegal, and they don't need to be legalized. And it may have already been those changes, most of them don't need the side setting. They're still non-conforming. So I just wanted to point out that there are no illegal lots in there. You can say that they're non-conforming. It doesn't make any sense.
Any other comments on the seeker review portion of the public hearing?
So if someone has environmental concerns about the impact of the development, we could
Or anything seeker related, now would be a time, now would be the chance. Thank you. Any additional comments on the seeker review portion?
They got Jerry Krause, whatever you said, this is more just the general environmental piece. I just want to point out that the village recently gave a variance regarding the building, new construction. And what was the most voting board, its chairperson and person. Their administration pulled that number out of error because they determined it was unfair. Again, final was an important very regular exception to the rule. We're going to loosen the wetland open from 50 from 100 feet. Green bank number from 50 to 25 feet. In either case, are we gonna continue granting variances that are not in the best interest?
Any additional comment on the seeker portion, the seeker review of the draft zoning law?
No, sorry, counting on that.
Anyone online have a comment on the seeker review portion? The draft zoning. Going once. So desired. Right, then hearing no additional speaking slowly public comment on the secret portion of the zoning review, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing on the secret review portion of the draft zoning law. 2023. All in favor? Which brings us to item number 4 on the agenda, which is the public hearing for the draft zoning law itself. I will just preface this since we do have a number of attendees in person and online. While we did do away with individual time limits back in 2018, I think in the interest of time, I am going to limit any individual public comment to 5 minutes. Please be respectful of other people's time so that we have enough time for everyone who wants to comment to go ahead and comment. For those of you who are not familiar, and I didn't say this before the secret portion, but most of you are probably familiar, but some of you may not be. A public hearing is a legally defined term, which is a type of open forum for the purpose of hearing comment. It is generally considered best practice that the board not respond during a public hearing. Our mission during a public hearing is to take any and all feedback that you would like to provide. So if you have questions, we're certainly taking notes, taking things under advisement. Don't feel that you're being slighted or ignored if you ask a specific question and don't get an answer. That is not the purpose of a public hearing as it is legally defined. I would like to limit, as I said, each individual to 5 minutes. That does not mean that someone can give their time to someone else. So each individual who would like to speak, if you use up all 5 minutes, I'll start to wave to tell you that time is up. If we get through and everyone who has wanted to comment has had an opportunity to comment, and we have time left, if someone who's already spoken would like to go again, I would not be opposed to allow that. So with that all said, I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing on draft local law 3 of 2023, which is our draft zoning law of 2023. All in favor? Okay, we are in our public hearing for the draft zoning law. And if anyone would like to speak, please do. I would ask that you state your name. It is not necessary for you to state your address.
This will be nice. With Anthony Hansen. I don't have to say where I'm good at it anyway. I'm in Congress. Reading a prepared statement. So here we go. First, I'd like to thank Ben Yarkler and the entire CPCR committee for their tireless work on the project. I believe the current proposal is not appropriate way forward, but do not wish in any way to diminish their efforts or imply that they did not intend to create the best plan. So, while zoning can be a contentious issue, in New York State there's a well-established process to ensure that any regulation reflects the needs and desire of the community. The foundation of this process is the comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan provides a process for identifying community resources, long-range needs, and the community health goals. Once adopted, local governments are required to follow this as a basis for regulations. The language in the New York State Comprehensive Plan guidance for local governments is clear. New York requires that zoning be adopted in accordance with a well-considered or comprehensive plan. This requirement reflects both underlying constitutional considerations and a public policy that views zoning as a tool to plan for the future of communities. Over the years, New York courts have identified the comprehensive plan through the governing body's process of careful consideration and forethought, resulting in a zoning that is calculated to serve the community's general welfare. I'll skip a little bit of that. During the 1990s, the zoning enabled statutes were amended to provide a process for adoption of a comprehensive plan, a formal planning document to provide goals and objectives for the community. Once the plan is adopted, the land use regulations must be consistent with it. That's the quote. And the 2021 comprehensive plan was adopted by the village board. Sets the following is 20-year vision synopsis. Offers ample, diverse, and inclusive opportunities for employment, education, and housing. Encourages social interaction and community engagement in all aspects of village life by people of all age groups, income levels, and cultural backgrounds. Protects and promotes our small town atmosphere with neighborhoods, downtown businesses, and institutions. Supports entrepreneurs and local businesses that provide services to residents and visitors. Advances environmental and economic stability by encouraging moderate population growth, while protecting open space and natural resources. It's guided by transparent, responsive, and fiscally responsible village government committed to public service, health, safety, and welfare. Sorry. This plan does not rank the goals, but does emphasize the importance of neighborhood character and preserving historic and cultural resources. Quote, Trumanburg is proud of its charm and character, a theme that was repeatedly emerged from community input. Unquote. While balancing the two goals of growth and preservation does present some challenges, the proposed revised zoning appears to favor the first clause regarding ample and inclusive housing, while mostly disregarding ideas of protecting and promoting small town atmosphere and distinctive neighborhoods. It does so by maximizing density and flexibility throughout all residential areas with little regard to minimizing impact. While the CPZRC's FAQ page on the subject implies that preserving neighborhoods was considered, these claims do not hold up to scrutiny. The FAQ cites the change in maximum number of units allowed from 35 to 20, but fails to mention that number can be increased back up to 35. 20 units are affordable. The FAQ mentions protecting existing character by reducing the minimum lot width 40 feet, but fails to provide sufficient reasoning on how changing frontage requirements to what exists in a very small minority of lots, but help maintain the character of other areas. While the change in setback rules to encourage consistency on a given street is sound and in line with the comprehensive plan, it would be difficult to argue that it would have a significant impact on conserving historical character of the village as emphasized in the comprehensive plan. Getting close. All right. Yeah, the second part. Yeah. I'm just skip ahead. So I'm just going to yeah, could I have someone continue reading from those finish line? Okay, you're all right then?
We just used it up.
All right. Thank you for your time. Okay.
So the following are examples of this imbalance. One, large project in this vision is the attempt to classify all residential areas as one zone. There are residential areas of the village. Consist of older, historic, moderate density homes. While large multi-unit dwellings in these areas may increase in affordability, it would be difficult to see how they would not harm the character of it. While the argument that these dwellings are currently allowed, these dwellings are currently allowed in action, there is no legal basis nor logical reasoning that would require competing regulations to don't comply. Instead, identifying areas in the village that can accommodate larger local residences, and building them appropriately without changing the character of existing neighborhoods should be a goal of any zoning. Drastic increases in PF proposed, while having the goal of increasing housing availability, does not take into account the goal of preserving neighborhood character. These areas are currently comprised primarily of single-family residences with the occasional duplex. The current proposal will allow anyone to add a second primary structure, regardless of size, given setback and height requirements. So given that setback. This building could contain one dwelling unit and then an auxiliary dwelling unit without site plan review, occupancy limits, or additional two spaces currently required for a single dwelling to be considered acceptable. The additional 60% reduction in lot, 15,000 to 6,500, and frontage, 100 feet to 40 feet, would further increase density beyond what would reasonably be considered as keeping in character with the existing density. Well, some would argue that a similar density is currently allowable via multi-unit building on a large lot. There are few vacant or subdivided lots, which are neighborhoods that accommodate 5 or more units, demolishing in existing. Again, any rules, existing or not, should not be included. They are not in compliance. PPVR opted for an incremental approach to donation, which seems inconsistent with the idea of comprehensive. Directing zoning one piece at a time fails to take into account the interaction between zones, or the implication of changes in one zone and the planning needs of the other. Additionally, while not necessarily in conflict, following issues of the zoning inconsistent with the purpose set out in section 101 of the zone. For the purpose of promoting the health, safety, morals, or the general welfare of the community, and the lessen congestion in the streets, to secure from fire, panic, and other dangers, to provide adequate light and air, to prevent the overcrowding of rooms, to avoid undue concentration population, to safeguard homes by preserving the attractive environment and residential buildings, service property values and more. One, the addition of ADUs without prior regulation. Anyone who construct an ADU may choose to maximize potential income from the unit for using it as a short-term rental. Unlimited short-term rentals without any regulation or even a parking requirement would clearly violate the purpose. The lack of prior regulation regarding use would also negate the stated purpose of allowing ADUs to promote and increase income. Two, the differing rules for conversion of an existing accessory building versus newly constructed ADUs is problematic. You say you're building a garage for permitting with a 5-foot rear and or side setback, but upon completion can immediately convert it to an ADU. The 15-foot setback ADU is needed. 3, removal of RV regulations. Allowing the unrestricted use of RVs in residential areas is clearly in violation of the purpose. Everyone can place in which they are used on the property. For use as additional living area or further long-term rental without limit or separate requirement. From vicinity to prevent overcrowding.
Jim.
Clear misalignment between the company and the proposed zoning required that the board refer proposed zoning back to the CPDRC or planning board for review. Comprehensive zoning revisions benefit from modeling, understand and demonstrate the potential impact. Convey those to the public, especially when it's your. Only then can the board make an informed decision. Implementing zoning that would be consistent with the building set forth.
Additional public comments. Anyone online who wishes to comment, please use the raise hand feature in the Zoom client. Anyone else?
So this is the third reading of the coming and party with these existing units. And I just looked on my copy here, it says that all ages attached or detached, no additional parking. I think that's what means, we already have parking problem in the village as it is. Because there's only one street parking on Main Street, and there's no on-street parking on the street. And I would say at least once a week, I see in Wood Street and on South Street, large trucks parked right in the lane, walking, and traffic. And I think if we have many more things, it's only going to be possible. The other thing I wanted to comment about is I feel my business for 30 years now. And one of the things I like most about things is that we have open spaces. And that I think creates the business. And I think if we start adding ADUs in people's backyards, etc., that's just going to go up. Because you don't want to see, too many units or apartments, etc., right next to your dwelling. And I think the food group is not a fixed culture place. And I think everybody knows what I mean. People do not put up fences, you have good relationships with the neighbors. Seeing them, the children playing in the yard, coming in the little garden project, or whatever. But once the fences go up, you don't even see who lives there. And I think that is really keeping the care of the presents to part of our reputation.
Okay.
See the shot, can you hear me online? You want the microphone here? Oh, you have to hold the microphone and come to the close to you.
Erica, can you hear Jessica okay?
Hey.
Yeah, that sounded better. Yeah, when you can hold it right up to your mouth. Thank you.
Should we point in the monitor that? See, I was thinking,
Yes.
Yeah, Dolores.
It's Dolores Federica of Bradley Street. I'd like to make a comment about, none parking for the ADUs. There might be going up on a few houses around town, in the village. Those ADUs are actually going to need a parking space. And we're not allowing that within the zoning law to make that happen. And as it's been said, there are already parking issues for many households within the village. And there's no such thing as parking along the street. You have to park off the street. However, within the village, we all know that the yards go down the ditch or up along something. And so it's not even be possible to park off the street at the street level in the village. So people then have to park in the driveway or in their yard. So for the ADUs that we might allow, there's not going to be a parking space for them. If your existing house happens to have a 2-car garage and you only have 1 car, or maybe you have 2 cars, they might be able to work out something for maybe an extra car to come along who might be staying in the ADU, because that ADU may not be a mother-in-law or father-in-law who cannot drive. So where are they going to park their car? And if that household decides to rent out the ADU for any period, that person's probably going to have a car, or maybe 2 cars, because it could be 2 people in here. Because we all know households with 3 or 4 people, you can have 3 or 4 cars. So I really wish that we would reconsider within the zoning, that we make an amendment to make sure that we require parking area for the ADU. Thank you.
Thanks, Dolores.
I'm also getting feedback. Sound is really bad, unfortunately. The stream is almost illegally unwatchable. They're saying that those mics are perfect. I don't know if you get. Move one over here.
So does anyone else want
I
to?
think it's
Yeah.
us projecting and we're closer to the speaker.
This one.
Again, right, so you
into the microphone, and not everyone's comfortable with that.
Hold on. Jess, can you test that mic again for?
I can certainly test. Asparagus. Can you hear me?
That sounds really
Arugula.
good, Jess. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. So it's really weird to talk into a mic, but you got this.
We also.
I got this. Have I got this? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Erica?
you got this. You got this.
Hey. Okay. So I just, Barb Mahalki, 27 Bradley Street. I've lived here in the village since 1997. It's a little while. And I just want to say that, in my opinion, increasing density is not the same thing as increasing affordable, low income, or Section 8 housing. Totally different things. Changing the character of the village does not necessarily increase the affordability of housing in the village. I feel like you're pushing an agenda. I think these proposed changes are too dramatic, too fast. And I also feel like resisting, disliking, or pushing against these proposed changes does not mean that someone wouldn't have been a good abolitionist back in the day. It does not mean that the people who don't want these changes don't support low-income housing or Section 8 housing or affordable housing. The two things are completely separate, and I feel like people are conflating the two. And I just want to say it's not the same thing. Thanks. Nobody else? It's not that bad once you get used to it.
Wait, see if that. Let's wait 1 second. I feel like I want to karaoke, Jerry. not appropriate. No?
No, we're talking. That was in the secret portion.
All right. So I just want to, was that really your joke at comedy night?
About the abolition?
Yeah. You got a zoning joke at comedy night at Garrett's.
No, I did not.
What was the
in
joke?
We are
We
in the
can talk
public, we are
afterwards,
in the
sure.
public hearings portion for
All
proposed
right.
local law 3 of 2023.
And if you don't believe in increasing density, then you probably wouldn't have been an abolitionist back in the day. So how much density is the goal? There's no specifics there. What is the goal and by when? I would like to say no to pre-existing non-compliant structures becoming dwellings. I would like to say, I won't say by name, but our ZEO and CEO need to stop issuing bogus permits. If you would like to I'd like to hear you address where your authority comes from on this issue. And maybe it's from section 207 under pre-existing non-compliant structures, which is regarding unsafe structures. At least the one behind my house was never unsafe. It's been in that condition since 1965. It was not in imminent danger of falling down, and it was never formally condemned or declared unsafe. And you gave them a permit anyway. I'd like to say no to giving variances on everything, even though I know, Royden, you don't agree that there's some healthy number of variances being granted, but 95% is really high. It's needs to be rethought, our whole philosophy on variances. Our permit app doesn't even have a space for your intended use for your project. I've always wanted to know what the project was going to be. Oh, it's really none of my business. And the village was saying it was none of their business either. It's somebody's business. It needs to be. So I think we need to fix the ZBA. I think training and review of all the processes. We have an unhealthy zoning system. What is going to happen when we change the rules to the new zoning law to make them more fair and less restrictive to all of you? Are we still going to give 95% variances on anything people want? Let's follow the rules. I'm done. Thanks.
A reminder for anyone online who wishes to comment, please use the raise hand feature in the Zoom client. Anyone else?
Oh, it's your first comment.
It is. You start my timer. Okay, I'm going to talk really close to the mic. I just want to say a few things. We knocked on a lot of doors in our neighborhood, and I want to say that everybody's interested and concerned, and everyone also appreciates all the work that has been put into this. And I spent a lot of time reading all the notes of the meetings all through the pandemic. You know, I know this was a lot of work and I appreciate it, but I feel like it's not ready to be passed. And I feel like everyone supports ADUs. People want affordable housing. They want changes, and it's just the way it's on paper now doesn't work. And I think everybody is here because they want to work together as a team to come up with something better and something that actually resembles the comprehensive plan. And I feel like aspects were cherry picked, but over and over, it's about protecting the charm of the village. And I don't think these things are mutually exclusive. And having been in another village on a planning board, I've seen a lot of bad development happening because it was allowed. And you've taken so much away. You've allowed so much really bad development to go up. I mean, I looked on the internet for 10-inch wide houses, And it's crazy, the stuff that I could put up on a 40-inch wide lot. And it's not compatible with what's in our neighborhood, but there's no site plan review. There's no design guidelines. I mean, we can do so much better. If you look at, Skinny Atlas or any village that has building form guidelines, there's so much we can do where people can build a small house or several small houses, but can do it in a way that fits in with our neighborhoods and preserves our open space. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. And I feel like if we got a grant and hired a planner to go through these zoning changes, we could just come up with so much more. And so I'm asking that you do not pass the zoning as is, and that we sit down, we put more resources into this to get a product that fits everybody's needs. This doesn't have to be lose-lose. I'm really confident that we could do a better job, but this is not what people wanted. This is not what the comprehensive plan describes. I'd also like to see copies of what the planning board responded and what their comments were. I feel like that should be made public. I'd like to know some of the lawyers' feedback on some of these laws. I mean, I just don't think this zoning fits our community, and I feel like we could all accomplish the goals in the comprehensive plan if we just put a little more time and resources and got some expertise and really, came up with something that fit everybody's needs. Do I have time left? Okay. I do just want to point out, we have a large lot on the corner of Congress and Seneca Street. And with this new zoning, we can chop that up into like 5 lots, put, trailers, huts, these crazy tree fort houses. There's nothing in the zoning that really limits this. There's no design guidelines. We could go 30 feet tall, 10 feet wide. We can build it out of concrete block. And I'm sure my neighbors would not like that. And it doesn't have to be that way. We can do better. And it's just really important that we do not pass it as is, and we get together as community and put our resources behind hiring someone to help us do a better job.
Hi, I'm Catherine Walker. I'm the Hanson's neighbor. And I want to just thank all my neighbors who have been able to get more granular with this plan and know a lot more about it than I do. But I think it's important to have more voices up here. So I'll just add that I think the spirit of the plan is really positive. I think the idea of growth and development is well intended and positive, and I support that. But if you can imagine for a moment, people not honoring the spirit of the plan, but rather honoring the letter of it. So I invite you to just think to yourself, what if people went to the extreme edges of these laws that are being proposed and started to build and develop according to the letter of the plan, not the spirit of it, how our community would change. And when we're talking about character, I think we're talking about open spaces and walkability. We're talking about people getting to know each other and a sense of community and togetherness. And so we don't want to have those values be lost. So thank you.
Anyone else?
Bridget Brewer. I just want to say that everyone has been so articulate, and I just support very much those ideas of just take it a little bit slower. And again, I sort of have PTSD from being in California, where I've seen town after town get destroyed. And several people have told me that don't worry, it's not going to happen here. And all it takes is one person and to, as you say, max out a property. And several of my neighbors have said, if it starts to happen, I'm going to max out my property and I'm going to leave. And I think this whole town is developed because people feel like they have have a real say in the town. They have built this library. They've donated things because it's their town. And once it becomes a developer's town, or let's say an elderly couple dies and their kids live far away and they can see that they can make a lot of money selling that property. That's how it happens. And people here, I don't see any sense of we're going to develop our lots just to be greedy. But if that kind of thing is allowed, I don't think it's good to say, don't worry, it's not going to happen, because it will happen. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Tom Brislow. I live at 78 East Seneca, and I'm winging it. I grew up in New England, lived for half of my life in the West, Santa Fe and Colorado. And I've seen what happens to towns. When I first moved to Santa Fe, we'd send checks back to New York, and they'd say, you need to send a check from the United States. We don't take checks from Mexico. I mean, it was a totally different scene. Places that went for 30 years ago, 10, 20,000 are now going for 3 or 4 million. The amount of growth is not at all what it used to be. My wife and I, before we moved back here, we drove 14,000 miles through the West, through the Rocky Mountain Sun Belt. And the donut effect you find in all the towns that I used to know years before was incredible. They had changed so much that I called it the donut effect, because the little cute downtown, all the charm and stuff was surrounded by sprawl. And it was a real eye opener. When you move back to the Northeast, because of stable population growth, we didn't want to have that kind of growth around us. And I feel like I've gone from the frying pan somewhat into a fire now. The amount of building that you're saying we can do on a single lot is just too much. It's just too much. People will exploit it. Developers will buy properties because they can say, hey, I can buy that property and turn it into so many rental units or so many whatevers that's going to be a big incentive for people. The nature, I'm afraid, of the town will change over a period of time, 20 years, 30 years, to be very, very different than it is now. So I agree with Rose. I think we can do better. I think we can have growth. We can do more building within the village. We can have, support a lot of really good things. But I do believe that we need to take another look, and we can do a better job than what we have right now. And I do thank you also for all of the effort you've put in. So that's my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Any other comments? I have one hand online. Kate, go ahead.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yep. Yes.
Okay.
Give me 1 second, Kate. All right, go ahead.
Great, thank you. Thanks, everyone. I just want to echo the thanks for all the work that went into this plan and to all the sharing around it. I just think, it's been really great to hear so many members of the community speak out in favor of slowing down a bit. I would say, I think that's mostly what I'm hearing here, and a lot of positive ideas shared around, how the community can be even more involved in shaping what's to come. I'm definitely for increased density, and I would say philosophically. And I firmly believe that we have, a responsibility to welcome more people into our village. I think we are a place of more climate resiliency than others, and that's part of the reality that's going to drive increased population here. And I think that can be a great thing. We can have a more diverse community. We can have an even more vibrant school system. So I'm excited for that. But after hearing the conversation so far, I still have a lot of questions. I would love to find out more about other communities that have been looked at, comparable communities, how the board has looked at, the differences among those various zoning plans, what's worked, what hasn't. And my sense is, because I know how much work has gone into this, that's been done. But I think it's been tough in pandemic times. It's been hard to come together as a community and really have insight and visibility into that work. So I am encouraging the board to vote no on moving this ahead tonight, but definitely looking forward to more engagement, more conversation around this. And I really appreciate the folks who were able to be in the room tonight and share their concerns. And it all seems to be coming from a very positive place. I think people are more aligned than not. And I think that's really, really positive. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Any other comments from the public?
I just have a question. Is this the last public hearing about this document?
This is the interesting phrasing, Janice.
Yes or no?
It's actually not either a yes or no. So if the village board chooses to vote on the document as it currently is proposed, then yes. However, if any changes are made of any kind, then we would need to have another public hearing before voting on that changed document.
And who would make those changes?
Could be either.
The zoning board or the village board?
It would either be the village board or the CPZR. Not the CPA.
Question for Erica. Are we allowed to ask a question of Erica? She's getting paid, right? I assume, or no?
I am here.
Oh, excellent.
Hear me?
I just, I'm confused about EDR's involvement. I didn't know if you helped create the zoning or you only worked on the comprehensive plan.
Yes, so EDR was hired as the consultant for the comprehensive plan. So we've walked through that process with the committee. When it comes to the zoning stage of it, the village opted to use EDR as primarily guidance for the seeker process and, navigating through that process, filling out the forms for that and whatnot. So because there was such good leadership on the committee, that's really driven from the committee through when it comes to the content of the zoning revisions.
So you've evaluated the zoning that they've written.
So we evaluated it based for the seeker form purpose. In terms of the content and, that's really driven from the village's stance. Am I reflecting that okay, Ben? Like, is that?
I'm happy to answer as well. Yeah.
Okay.
So EDR was, for the zoning part, was brought on to help with kind of the seeker process, the adoption process, the paperwork, the resolutions to help us kind of draft all these things. Obviously, they're reviewed by the board and by Guy, and we pass them. So it was helping in kind of the logistics of this adoption process, which is now a 6-month plus going on process. But the content has been very much driven by the CPZR with a member of the planning board, the zoning board, this board, community members, folks on that board have many years as experience in zoning, planning, a number of different things. So we didn't feel a need to have a lot of handholding experience from EDR. It is worth saying, we did get some kind of initial feedback and thoughts from EDR at the end of the comprehensive plan. So we had some initial input, but it hasn't been the large bulk of the work has been from the committee.
Okay. So I was interested if those are things that we could see, like, what the planning board thought. I'd be interested to know, what their ideas were, if they thought the zoning needed some work. And I think EDR did some of the planning for Sackett's Harbor where I used to be. So I've seen some of their work, and they have building form guidelines and other things that I think would be really helpful for our community.
And I will say that is not off the table for future, stages. It's just that wasn't the scope that we had agreed upon when embarking upon this process. So.
Any other public comments on the draft zoning law?
Hi, I'm Ryan James, and I am a new member of the Village of Trumansburg. I moved here from Brooklyn, New York, where I've lived for the last 20 years. And I left Brooklyn and I was very attracted to this community because of the opposite of the experience of high density there. And I am particularly concerned. I'm just getting informed and caught up about this process, but this extensive process that's been taking place over the last couple of years, from what I gather. 5, yes. I do think the one thing that keeps ruminating for me in my mind about this is just the lack of. Seems like it's really open-ended. And I really am concerned about that, because I think it's kind of echoing something I've heard already tonight, that this is something that people will take advantage of and exploit. And I'm very concerned about that, because what attracted me to this place is the charm and the character. And I think that sometimes growth, people will equate more money, more people, more funds to support the community needs, the infrastructure. But that also oftentimes more doesn't mean more quality, more care. It can be more problems, right? You just have more to deal with. So just the idea of slowing down, of just, I know some of the folks have been working now, as I'm hearing, for 5 years on this process. So from that perspective, I can understand you might want to come to a conclusion to move on or to move forward. But I think that this is something that just does not feel resolute at this stage. The amount of questions that I'm hearing and just the concern, I think it's worth slowing down and really, I'd be curious really about answering the question, like who else could we, what professional might we speak to outside of our pool of resources, maybe to get outside perspective. Sometimes when you're really focused in on something and you've been kind of dialed in, you can get lost in your perspective. And I think that it might be worthwhile for us to continue asking the question of who else who has experience with this in a professional capacity might we engage with to get support. Because I don't think that, I think it's okay to say, hey, I've done everything I can do, ask for help. And as a community, we might want to ask for someone outside of our own community if we have limited resources and we're hitting a wall as far as how far we're able to think this through. Because I do think the liability here, preservation of the character of this community is at jeopardy, from what I'm hearing. That's all. Thanks.
Their public comment in person or online.
Can I make another comment?
Sure.
Bridget Brewer, again, something that I have read is being addressed is the short-term rental regulations. And I feel like that another good reason to postpone the vote on this would be to make some recommendations, some restrictions on that before people are allowed to build ADUs or things that are so much more profitable to short-term rent, and it will not accomplish your goals of getting affordable housing. I know neighbors that can make $2,000 a weekend. They're not likely going to put up an ADU for a long-term rental, which I know we really need. So I feel like if that's something that can be addressed before people start in right away and do their short-term rental additions, and then we have to take it back, and say, no, you can't do that. And they've already built it, because the income difference is quite tremendous. So thank you.
I just had a quick note from a neighbor. Although the community's understanding based on the explicit language of the new comprehensive plan was that the zoning revision is supposed to ensure implementation of the plan, the proposed adoption of single residential zone fundamentally rejects the plan's commitment to preserving neighborhood distinctiveness. With no modeling or other tools to demonstrate the actual impact of the proposed changes, it is impossible for the community and the board to understand the visual, traffic, services, and other impacts that could result. Zoning changes of this magnitude require a full environmental impact assessment, which under seeker regulations should not be done until all segments of the proposed zoning revision are available for review and analysis. Points of concern. Creating a new one-size-fits-all residential zone that would substantially increase allowable residential density throughout the village without regard to location eviscerates rather than implements the approach of the comprehensive plan. I promise I'll be quick. No analytical tools have been provided for a hard look at the potential consequences of the proposed revisions. The board does not have the necessary information to perform the comprehensive hard look environmental review of the proposed zoning revisions required by seeker. Moreover, segmentation of the revisions for the purposes of environmental review is strongly discouraged by the DEQ for good reason. The board should consider conserving resources by determining now that the project has the potential to cause significant environmental impacts on the community and make a seeker positive declaration to that effect, which will then trigger an environmental impact statement process that will enable the board to properly consider and address the various issues in depth.
I think one thing, I became involved in this process because I realized people had no idea what was going on. And I know for the members of the board, especially Ben and your team, that you've been immersed in this and you have asked for public input and you've had meetings that are open to the public, but nobody knows what's going on. And one good thing was I had an opportunity to knock on a bunch of doors. I met a bunch of people. And if I knocked on your door, would you raise your hand? A little higher. Or received an email from me, one or the other. Okay, I think that's 60% of the people that are here because I took a little bit of time and I walked around the village and knocked on some doors. I knocked on probably 30 doors. I talked to 10 people. 6 of them showed up. I think the importance of what's going on has not been conveyed to the community. And that's, I think, pretty clearly demonstrated by that little fact. So that's it. So again, just open it up. Ben, I appreciate your time. I think we've had some good conversations, even though we're not seeing eye to eye on a lot of stuff, but we're still talking to each other and saying hi. So it's great. That's it. Thanks.
Any additional public comment? We are taking, if someone's not here, we are taking letters
Yeah.
submitted to the village.
And if
Either-
everybody else wants to hear it.
Either to, for the purpose of for the legal definition of a public hearing,
Sure,
the individual can submit that letter to either clerk.
it has been submitted,
Then it is on record.
right? I just didn't know if
I think
anybody
if he
else.
wants to- If he wants people to hear it, go ahead.
If that individual would like to come to the public hearing online or in person,
It's on there,
is he?
Jim.
JW.
That individual should take a moment to potentially read their statement.
Yeah, I know he might be flying an airplane, but listening.
He's on live and flying a plane.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's let him pay attention to each other.
Okay, do I have to go ahead to read this?
Yeah.
I'm getting an eye roll, I'm not sure.
No, it's not an eye roll. The concern is
It's a,
the legal definition of a public hearing is for members of the public to be here in person or online. To read their,
I'm not.
see if he can unmute.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, you goaded me into it. I just got in. So I can read my letter, but really, there's a lot of stuff in here that you guys have already gone over. But I do want to say that I agree with everything that everyone said there tonight. I think it's spot on, Rose. You really summed it up completely. And Tony as well. People just really don't know what's going on. And I think it's important that everybody finds out and has a voice in this, regardless of how you come down on the issues. But for me personally, what I really like to know is, why are we combining zones R1 and R2 together? I feel as though we don't really need to do that. I was told by you, Ben, that the state was kind of requiring us to do that. I spoke to the state office that is in charge of that, and they told me specifically that that's not the case. You don't need to combine R1 and R2 together. And for everyone out there that is not aware, R1 is the current zoning for the larger part of the village with, the historic homes, et cetera. R2 is, my understanding, is the manufactured home park. So basically what it looks like to me you're trying to do is combine those two together so that we're all encompassed into the same category. It just doesn't seem to me that we really are in the same category. There's nothing wrong with the mobile home park. It's great, and I'm really happy with what's going on there. But that is a different type of project than what the rest of the village is. So it doesn't make sense to me to combine the two of those together. And it doesn't sound like we have to combine those two together. We can keep them separate, and we can put in design requirements that would allow those two to coexist. So that's really my big point. The other points I have in my letter, which I really think I don't need to read this whole thing, but the lot size changes are just kind of ridiculously small. I agree with, I think Tony read there that there's really no point in chopping them up that small. I think some other people have mentioned that as well. With the Village Grove, is it called Village Grove now? I think is what the current project is called. We are addressing, adding a lot more density into the village. I mean, that project looks like it's going to happen. From my understanding, there's going to be 60 or 70 new dwellings there. I mean, that's a pretty big percentage added to the village. So I don't think we're not addressing those things, and I am supporting that as well. I also agree that the ADU issue is tricky. If you don't have design requirements in your rules here, then really the ADU could be anything. And maybe it's going to have to meet the state building requirements, I would assume, but it really could be anything. And I agree with one of the speakers there earlier. You know, you really need to have some rules in place that guard against people making bad decisions and using, you know, the lack of rules to put in the worst case. We just really don't want that. So I really suggest that you consider keeping R1 and R2 zones, adding some design requirements. I understand that you can't use the term manufactured or mobile home in the draft. The state doesn't want you to do that. That's fine. You know, you've taken that out of there, and you can still address having the two zones by having design requirements. I would suggest that the minimum lot size be something a little bit more reasonable, you know, 10,000 square feet, you know, 12,000 square feet, and the frontage be not 40 feet, but something a little more reasonable, 75, 80, something like that. And I also agree with what everyone said there about the short-term housing. This is a big deal. You really need to look at that and get some, you know, some real fair rules in place before you just allow people to come into the village, buy up property, you know, raise the value of these things so that it's not affordable housing anymore. I mean, that is the goal. And that's basically the thrust of my letter. I will say that I do appreciate what the committee and the board is trying to do here in your efforts, but let's be reasonable. I think that we need to step back here, take another look at this, get some, you know, maybe some more experts involved to come up with a better plan, because these things are going to be with us for, you know, a long time to come. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim.
Sure.
Did you have a timer going? Because that was pretty good.
I did. Exactly 5 minutes.
Excellent. Much appreciated. Any other public comment? With or without a timer? We are coming up to the time allotted for the next piece of business, which we don't want to push off in the form of our sewer law, but I will go around one more time.
I'll just say one thing. So I did already speak because I was reading Tony's letter, but in my own voice, I would like to say that I do agree with the comments here as a village resident. I didn't just read that as the puppet. I agree with all of it. So I just wanted to make that point. That's another body.